As we continue reflecting on the incredible strength that God offers us, let's now explore another powerful aspect of our faith. Faith brings hope. This is not just a theological concept, but a living, breathing reality that can transform our everyday lives. In the midst of trials and challenges, it can sometimes feel as if the light is too far away, as if the path ahead is completely obscured. Have you ever been in a situation where everything seemed uncertain, where the darkness of life's struggles felt overwhelming? You may have asked yourself, how do I keep going? Or where is the hope in all of this? I want to remind you today that hope is not something that is always visible, nor something we can always touch or see clearly. As Romans 8 verse 24 says, "For in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have?" This verse speaks to the very nature of hope. Hope is something that cannot be seen, yet it is in this unseen hope that we find the strength to press forward, even when the way ahead is unclear. If you could see all the answers and know every step in your life, would you still need to have hope? Hope exists because it is a vision of something better that we have not yet experienced. It is a force that moves us forward even in the darkest of times. Let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you felt hopeless, where everything seemed to be falling apart? And yet, in the midst of that trial, you found a small glimmer of hope that kept you going? That is what faith in God does. It gives you the eyes to see hope in places where others might only see despair. You see, hope in God is not about seeing everything clearly right away, but rather about trusting that even when we cannot see the way, He is still leading us. In times of uncertainty, God is the light that guides us, even when we don't know exactly where the path leads. This is the hope that comes through faith, and it is this hope that allows us to move forward when life feels like it's shrouded in darkness. Think about it. What happens when you don't have hope? Without hope, we tend to give up. We stop trying. We see the roadblocks as permanent obstacles. But hope, the hope that comes from God, turns those roadblocks into stepping stones. It makes the impossible seem possible. It allows us to see beyond our present situation and trust that God is doing something greater in us and through us, even if we don't yet understand it. Let me share an example from the Bible. Think of Abraham, the father of faith. God promised him that he would be the father of many nations, even though he was already old and his wife, Sarah, was beyond childbearing years. If you were in his shoes, would you have believed in that promise? It must have seemed impossible. And yet, Romans 4 verse 18 says that against all hope, Abraham in hope believed. Despite the impossible odds, he held on to the hope that God would fulfill his promise. And as we know, that hope did not disappoint. God kept his word. This is the same hope that you and I can cling to. In moments when you feel like giving up, remember Abraham's story. If God was faithful to Abraham, He will be faithful to you. But what about those moments when you feel like your faith is weak, or when the hope feels distant? This is where the power of trusting God's promises comes in. If you are feeling weak, take comfort in the fact that God has not left you, and He will give you the strength to hold on. Faith is not about seeing everything right away, but about trusting God's plan, even when you don't understand the full picture. In the same way, let's think about the journey of a seed. When you plant a seed in the ground, you can't see what's happening beneath the soil. For a long time, it may appear as if nothing is happening at all. But you know something is going on because you have faith in the process. If you give it time, the seed will grow, and eventually, you'll see the fruit of your faith and patience. Hope works in the same way. Sometimes, it may feel like nothing is changing, like your prayers aren't being answered, but behind the scenes, God is at work. He is using your faith, your patience, and your hope to grow something beautiful in your life. So when you can't see the results yet, trust that God is working on your behalf. Let's pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to give up, but then you found strength in something as simple as hope? Maybe it was a word of encouragement from a friend, a verse from Scripture, or a feeling deep inside you that God was still with you. That's the power of hope, even when the circumstances seem bleak. But here's the important question. If hope is unseen, how do we cultivate it in our lives? How do we make sure we are feeding our hope, rather than letting it die? First, it starts with faith in God's promises. If we believe that God is faithful, we can trust that He will fulfill His promises, even when we cannot see how. Second, it takes action. Faith without works is dead, James 2 verse 26. So when we hope, we must also act in faith. Trusting that God will lead us is not passive. It involves moving forward even when we can't see the whole path. Think of a person standing at the edge of a cliff. There's no visible bridge, and it's hard to see where the road leads. But they trust that if they take a step forward, the path will be there. This is what faith-filled hope looks like. Even when we cannot see the outcome, we trust that God will make a way. If we step forward in faith, God will meet us where we are. So I want to leave you with this question to reflect on. Where in your life do you need to step forward in faith, even when you cannot yet see the results? I believe that if you take that step, if you continue to hope and trust in God, then you will see His faithfulness at work in your life. Hope may be unseen, but it is powerful. It will guide you through the darkest times and give you the strength to keep going when everything around you seems to be falling apart. And remember, hope in God is never in vain. It will lead you to a future that is greater than anything you can imagine. So don't give up on hope. It's the key to seeing God's promises come to life in your life.